So we're recording. I'll post that someplace. You all have it. Let's talk how I would go about doing this. Okay. A couple problems I saw often was folks didn't seem to understand a couple critical ideas. So let me kind of walk through them conceptually while Xcode launches. That shouldn't take that long. Is that? Okay. There we go. All right. So is it the screen sharing that's slow? Maybe it's not Zoom's fault after all this. Okay, here we go. Okay. Oh, that looks great. Get some space. There we go. All right. So if I have in my storyboard, here we go. So that should help. Okay. A couple different labels. And a button. One major thing that I saw that people were doing was don't read information out of this label. Like, frankly, these labels should only ever be used to display information. Like, just a good rule of thumb, don't read information out of them. Because if there's information in them, you put it there. And a better place to store it is to just store it than reading data here. Why? Is it bad? Is it like there's some real reason why it's bad? No, it's just bad to do it that way. It's like, like some things that they're not bad in and of themselves, but if you're doing them, that's probably a signal that something else has gone wrong. I don't know what that would be. Maybe eating a cheeseburger after 11 p.m. Like, it's not bad to eat a cheeseburger after 11 p.m., but that's a signal that there's something else wrong in your life. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Okay. Same thing here. There's nothing bad with reading information out of these labels. It's totally valid, but it's just like it's a signal that you haven't set the thing up right if you have to do that. So that's one common mistake that I saw. Another was, just remember this button, all the action happens on this button. So rolling the dice, pushing the randomization to the label, and then evaluating those randomizations and displaying their if-else statement stuff. That all happens in the same button. So there's no world where if the numbers change, then do the evaluation. That's not how we're operating here. It doesn't think like that. It really is just like there's a label, there's a button. The button just generates two random numbers, takes one of them and sticks them in this label, takes the other, sticks them in this label, looks at those two random numbers, does an series of if statements. It says, is it this, is it that, is it this, is it that? And when it finds one that it likes, then it throws it into a third label, which I need to put up here. So it makes conceptually high level sense? Okay. Who here was like, that's not how I was thinking about it, and that was helpful for you to say? Somebody else like that? I threw a couple of emails that were like that. No one wants to admit it. That's okay. Trust me, there are some of you like that because I sent you emails. All right, so let's throw one more label in there. All right, cool. Next, we're going to two up our screen. So we have the view controller on the left-hand side, and over here, I want my code. I don't know why it does that, but it's annoying. Okay, so we'll take this one. This is going to be called dice label 1. This one will be called dice label 2. By the way, this is another thing I saw, just people not making logical names for these things. So call it, it's 5 letters. You can write label. So saying dice L1, just write label. Trust me, tomorrow when you're looking at this file, it'll just make more sense to you if you name it a name that makes sense. Is this legible back there? Should I make it bigger text? Bigger? Yeah.
Can you put numbers for the variable?
Say again?
Yeah. Can you put numbers for the variable?
Yes, but you can't start it with a number. So you can't
Okay.
say one dice label.
Okay.
It has to start with a normal character. Okay, cool. And then we'll call, I don't know what we call this. We'll call this like game name label. That's where it'll say like Snake Eyes, that kind of thing. And then the meat and potatoes, which is the button. This is where the real work gets done in this action. Remember, whenever you move a button over here, it's going to default to outlet, which is annoying. You don't want to change the word button. You want the button to do something. So that's an action. Give it a name. I'll call it roll dice button. Okay. Cool. Now what I need to do is create a variable that I'm only going to use. Any variable created inside this ID action, just to return to the metaphor we used on Tuesday. Any variable that we create inside this action is like, this is the start of the Big Bang and this is the heat death of the universe. Okay, so like, if I create a variable inside of here, it will only be accessible inside of this momentary blink of an eye when this code runs. Make sense? The second this is over, any variables created in here will disappear for forever as if it never existed. And so, I'm going to close this because I don't need to see it anymore, I don't think. Okay. So, I'm going to create a variable in here, and I'm going to use let because when you roll the dice only get a random number once. They don't get redone. It just like it happens once. And again, I know I'm going to hit roll over and over and again. But don't worry, by the time I hit roll a second time, this universe is over. Okay? Cool. And I'm going to give this a name, and the name needs to be different than the label name. You can get away with calling them both the same thing, I believe. Xcode will let you. That is a bad idea. That's like the Ghostbusters crossing the streams. You don't want to do that, okay? Because the world gets confused by that, okay? So instead, give this a unique name for this random number. So I'll call it like dice roll 1 or something, or dice random or whatever. Just something to let you know that's not the label. And then there's that int code that's random. Let's see if I can get it to... Maybe know it off the top of their head if they just like yell at me, so I don't have to look it up. There it is. There it is. Cool. And then here I feed it how many 0 to what?
6.
Yeah. And then plus 1. Yep. Cool. So there's my first random number. Here's my second random number. Now there's 2 random numbers. Why are there 2 random numbers? Because they're 2 dice. I can't take dice random 1 and put it into dice label and then do it to number 2 because this doesn't happen twice. It just does it. Argument passed to a call that takes no arguments. Is it before arc? I'll look it up.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, how am I supposed to spell this? Is it uniform underscore arc for random? Is that right?
Arc for random underscore uniform.
Thank you. There it is.
And the upper bound is 6.
Okay. Oh, because it goes 0 to 6, not inclusive of 6. Got it. Okay. No red stop signs, so we're good. Okay, cool. So now let's use it. Let's just throw those into this variable. Do that for the other one. Okay. Now this, you should have been able to get pretty quickly if you understood how variables work and all that kind of stuff. Oh, and I got to convert that to a string. You're not going to give me a little tip on that? Okay, fine. Now, why is this not valid? Why would that break it? See why you guys get this. What's wrong with that? Yeah.
You're saying the label equal to the string?
Yeah.
The whole thing. And
Yeah.
The label has a lot of.
That's like saying like Artie Brown. To me, my hair is brown. You know, you need to say like Artie dot hair equals brown. Does that make sense? Also, you need a mask. It's okay. It happens to all of us, dude. Do I have one? No. I can get one. Go check the office. They got them in there. Okay. I hate COVID. It sucks. All right. Because we all forget to get our dumb mask on, right? And then you walk into Kroger, and then you feel like a crazy person. And you're like, no, I'm on board. Okay. Dice label 1.text equals blah, blah, blah. Yeah, he's totally right. 100%. Okay. Now we need to, like, check these things. And so I'm not going to write I don't know how many possible permutations it is. It's 36 times 2, really, because it's like, if it's 1 and 2 is different than 2 and 1, right? Yeah.
So what exactly does dot text mean? Like, I know it's sort of, but like, what
Great. Excellent. Thank you for asking that. So dot syntax just means it's the same thing in JavaScript. So it's super common across programming. So it's not just Swift. Dot syntax just means get more specific or go into the thing. Okay, so like the example I use all the time is if you want to refer to my keys that are right here, you would say universe.earth.north.america.united states.ohio.oxford.laws hall.205. Is that the name of this room? Sure. 205.rd.jeans.left pocket. Keys. That's how you get to my specific keys. It might be in a different place than your specific keys. Does that make sense? So it goes from really broad to really specific. Now, most times in Swift, you're just doing one thing dot, something else, but it is entirely possible to have an infinite number of something dot somethings dot somethings dot somethings to get more specific. Make sense? So this is saying go and get the dice label, which, like he was saying, is everything. It's not just its text that it holds, but like you can also modify its position and page, what color it is, blah, 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 blah. And I want to change inside a dice label, I want to change the text. In the same way, I could also change the y coordinate or whatever. And then what I want to change it to. Cool? Great. All right, so now I have the laundry list of if statements. So I can just do this. Now, there is a more efficient way to do this. And if you figured it out, good on you. But we're not going to get into that. So if dice random 1 is equal to 1 is equal to, I know I said it before, but I'm just pointing out all the landmines multiple times. Is equal to is double equals. Single equals just means set it to. Okay? So this is like saying x equals 5. And this is like saying, is x equal to 5? Okay? So the double equals is an evaluation. So if dice random 1 is equal to 1 and dice random 2 is equal to 1, then put in that other label, game name label dot text equals snake eyes. Then now you could do an else there too. If dice random 1 is equal to 1 and dice random 2 is equal to 2, then whatever that other thing is.
Australian Joe.
Thank you. I love these names. I had to like Google each one to make sure none of them were like in Urban Dictionary for something. Like I was like, I just want to make sure. Okay, great. So there you go. Now note, this is the annoying thing and why I said it's like 36 times 2 is a number of possible, well, minus these matches, but it's a lot of numbers. This is just saying if dice equal to 1, or dice 1 is equal to 1 and dice 2 is equal to, dice equals to 2. This is not saying if dice random 1 is equal to 2 and dice random 2 equals to 1, which in your table would also result in Australian Yo. So you got to then do that again later, like just copy and paste, and it's feels like an infinitely long list of if statements. But that's where you're going to get. And you just do that, and then that, and then that, and then that, and that. And it's really, really long. It's really, really annoying. And yes, there are more efficient ways of doing it. But don't worry about them, because right now we're just learning if statements. Make sense? Cool? Okay. So now if I run this, it should work. But we're going to have to compile anyway, or run the simulator anyway, so might as well get going. What questions do y'all have? Does this make sense? Those of you that were stumbling, did you basically get here? Okay. Those of you that were stumbling so much that you didn't land a plane at all, did that start to unlock so you're feeling better about things? Okay, cool. Let's see if we can get there. It's like 1 in 16 chance of happening, right? No, 18 chance. Here we go. Snake eyes. Okay. Woo! Sound good? Okay. We did it. Awesome. Okay, now we're going to do today a more realistic app, because very rarely we're going to do kind of the first real appy app today. And today is kind of an important day because it's the first real appy app. Here's the other thing about today. There's going to be some things that you're going to watch me do, and you have to write them down. This is the things you do in this order every time. And then some things where you're like, you can kind of do whatever you want with it, okay? But just as I go, I will do my best to be clear. So like, this is the way you have to do it every time, versus this you can be willy-nilly with it, okay? But if you're unclear as to which things have to be done in exactly the right order with the exact same things, just raise your hand, okay? If your brain isn't ready for this kind of stuff, I'm trying to record it. Hopefully the recording is going and we're good. If not, office hours, that kind of stuff, okay? I wish I had a backup recording, but I can't. Okay? Cool. The main thing you will notice about apps, now that you are making them, you will see this everywhere, is that tables are the name of the game. And a table, you might just call a list. In fact, the more recent way of making stuff besides storyboards, the emerging new way, calls it lists instead of tables. But we're going to use the word table because that's the right word. Tables are just this. There's a list of things with little disclosure indicators that says you can tap on them. And they have text, usually. And you tap on one of them, and they go to a page that shows you information about that thing that you tapped on. Okay, so if you tapped on circle, this page will be about circle. Okay? You can picture the most obvious version of this that everyone has access to is the address book, right? Giant list of people's names, you tap on one of them, it brings up a card with all their contact information. Cool? Makes sense? Okay. This is everywhere. Here's the crazy thing about tables. They're super duper mega customizable. You can do everything you can do on a screen, you can do in a cell on a table. So, for instance, this is where everybody's like, it's not really 70% of all of the 500 interfaces are table. I can think of tons that I use that don't look anything like that. And then I start drawing what a custom cell could look, what a custom table look like, and you're like, oh. So, for instance, what's Instagram? Instagram is just a really wackadoodle table where you have a big picture, the username that posted it, a comment or two, and the number of hearts, okay? And then underneath there is another cell that's exactly the same thing, repeat, 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 infinity, okay? So even this is a table, okay? Yeah?
Is that an Apple thing, or is that
An everything thing? I don't know Android well enough to know if it's as common as it is in iOS, but I know it's everywhere in iOS, right? So your list of podcasts, your list of tweets are probably all on the table. Your list of Instagram things, your list of Reddit posts, your list of, it's all just lists, okay? Like this is like the meat and potatoes. And so today we're going to build one of these, and your exercise is to make a little Pokédex. You guys remember Pokédexes from Pokemon, right? Pokédex just is it's like the encyclopedia of Pokemon. So you click on Pikachu, and it shows you a picture of Pikachu with some information about Pikachu, okay? If you're anything like me, and you only vaguely understand Pokemon, despite the fact that you've been exposed to Pokemon about 100 million times. I used to bake Pokemon toys, and I still don't understand Pokemon. I have 3 children that are all obsessed with Pokemon. I still don't understand Pokemon. Okay, like I totally don't get it. It's basically like rock, paper, scissors with animals, from what I understand. Okay? But if you're like me and you're kind of clueless, have no fear. There's enough description of how it works on the Canvas assignment. If you're somebody that's super pumped about Pokemon, yay, that's why I picked it. Okay, so try to find something you would get pumped about. All right, so you're going to make that. And when you think about it, all Pokédex is the same thing as the address book. It's a list of things. And the things are Pikachu and Squirtle and it's probably spelled wrong, and Charmander. And that's the extent of my knowledge of Pokemon. Okay? Oh, there's one named Articuno, which was named while I worked there. Okay? And then, I'm not going to say whether or not it's named after me. It wasn't, but I like to make people think it was. And then you tap on one of them and it blows up a picture of Pikachu with his ears and his little thingies. And, okay, and then Pikachu and electric type and a little description of Pikachu. Got it? Got the idea? Okay. Yeah.
Do I have to make it a page that has
No. That's what's awesome because a Pokemon is a struct, right?
yeah, but
Just like humans are structs. And so I can make a Pokemon struct that holds name, type, region it's from, description, image name, and then when I go here, I can just say, go get the Pikachu struct and fill it in with the Pikachu struct. And then when you tap on Squirtle, go get the Squirtle struct and fill in with the Squirtle struct.
so that means whenever you go to a different screen on the app, it's actually the same screen in the storyboard, but it's populating it with the
No. These are two screens in the storyboard. Yeah, so one's a
Yeah,
table,
different two
and
screens.
one's a generic,
That's
a generic
okay.
thing that says there will be an image here, and there will be a name of a Pokemon, and there will be a
Yeah.
blah blah blah, there will be a yada yada. Yeah, cool. Okay.
Do you want to put images, or do you not know?
Yeah, we'll get to images too. So yeah, if we don't get the images today, then I'll make you put in images after we get to it. Okay, but we're driving the bus there. Images, believe it or not, are just as easy as your label is here. Okay, in the same way you say blah 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 dot text equals yada yada, you just say blah 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 dot image equals yada yada, and then ta-da, image. Cool. But we'll get to that hopefully today. If not, we'll do it Tuesday. Cool. All right, let's do tables, and this is like I said, all over the place. This is so all over the place that to me, this might be the most important of our times together. So make sure you get it. If you don't, ask lots of questions. So I'm going to make a brand new project. I appreciate that you're moving. That's awesome. Okay. Yeah, move if you need to see the screen. If you want it bigger, tell me. Whatever you need to succeed. Okay, so I have a brand new project with a storyboard and a view controller. Now, these tables are so common that there's actually a special kind of view controller called table view controller that holds tables. Okay, so they're very, very common, but we're not going to use that. We're just going to convert our existing table view into a table view with a table, or our existing view controller into a view controller that just has a table in it. So if I type in table, I want to add a table view. I am not adding a table view controller. We'll do that later. For now, we're just adding a table view. And I drag it in here. Now, if I don't make this bigger, this will be the size of my table. So people will launch the app and have a little teeny table right there, and they can scroll a little teeny table in the view, okay? That's not good. We want it to be full screen because that's how they work, okay? But if I wanted to, I could keep it that teeny. Yeah?
The Zooms are working for one of my friends that's in this class is trying to get on from Zoom. She said she can't see.
Yeah, Zoom is down. So I'm just re-recording. So just let them know. I'll post it. If it works, I'll post it. If not, then we might repeat ourselves on Tuesday. Okay, so. All right, so I got this table view. Keeping it teeny is dumb, so I'm going to make it big. Now, right now, I'm previewing iPhone 11. That means if I run this inside an iPhone 7, it's going to look weird. If I run it in an iPhone 11 Max, it's going to look weird. But for me, for now, we'll talk about how to fix that later. For me, for now, I'm just making my table view big. Okay? Now that does not, it just says table view. That looks nothing like a table, right? It's just a gray square. It doesn't look like a table. So what I need to do is in this table view, wire up a couple things so that I can mess with it. The first thing I need to do is right here, see this little up here in the inspectors, this one right here called the attributes inspector. It looks like this. This is again Exhibit A. All labels, all icons need labels, but it's confusing. This one looks like this. This is how I'm going to make some changes to this table so that I can mess with it in code. The first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the first line here that says content is set to dynamic prototypes. It defaults to that. It shouldn't be a problem. But if you go clicking like a wild person, or you have a monkey in the room that messes with your keyboard or whatever, and that gets set and doesn't work, just make sure that that's the case. So content is set to dynamic properties. It's the very first thing once I select the table view inside of the inspector's palette, or inspector attributes inspector. Next, how these tables work is that I can have an infinite number of cells. Cells are the things inside of a table. I can have an infinite number of cells, but all of them are just copies of one standard issue cell. Okay? And so that one standard issue cell, that kind of added an Eve cell, is called a prototype cell. Okay? And I can have multiple prototype cells. So I can make a table that sometimes looks like Adam's, and sometimes looks like Eve's, and sometimes looks like Kevin's, and sometimes looks like Rufus the dog. Okay? That doesn't matter. Okay? It's just that I have to have a prototype first, and when it gets copied in order to make all these. Now, the vast majority of the time, you're making one prototype cell that all of them are copies of that one, because they all look the same. But you can imagine a world where some of these cells you want to be a different color or different height or whatever, right? You with me? And that's when you would use prototype cells that are different. Instead, we're just going to make one. So the second choice down in this exact same palette is prototype cells, and it's a number. And I just say, I only want one prototype cell. Bink. And it now has made one prototype cell. When it did that, I want you to watch this right here. I'm going to undo really quick. See this here, my little layout? You can see it says there's a view controller, and inside of that view controller is a view, and inside of that view is a safe area, and there's also the table itself, the table view. You'll see there's nothing else in here. However, the moment I hit prototype cell, I'll go bink. Now it adds a little chevron to mean there's more things inside of here. And if I expand that, the more thing inside of there is that cell that I just made up, the prototype cell. So I'm going to select that table view cell. That's the unique special one that all other cells will be based upon. So I've selected it over here. You can see it updates my view to say like you've got just this little prototype cell. Okay, but if I have that, this contextual menu over here changes. So what's giving me all my controls over my table? Now it's giving me controls over my cell. And there's two more things we have to do here, and then we're done with the required things you always do when you set up tables, okay? And I'll walk you through them all over again in a second, literally from scratch. But over here on the left, we have to say, hey, what type of cell do you want to have? And I can have a custom one where I can make it look like anything. I can make it look like Instagram. But that's pretty complicated, and we're not ready for that yet. So instead, I'm going to change style to basic. You're basic, all right? So I want this style of this cell to be basic. And a basic cell style just means there's just text in it. That's it. It's just a simple cell that's really normal height, and it's got one text label in it. And that text label defaults to the word title. That's all basic means. Okay? You with me so far? Okay. So always, at least until you are intentionally doing it otherwise, always just set the style to basic. It's way easier. There's some other pre-built styles. Frankly, you'll see these pre-built styles used everywhere in iPhone development because developers just like to use the default thing. But basic is the nice, simple one. Then, underneath, 2 lines underneath that, is this thing called identifier. And what this is saying is, hey, I have a prototype cell right here, this brand new one. There's this, there's maybe many, but this one is special. It's right here. And I want to give this a name so that in code I can say, hey, go make a copy of that prototype cell. And then the code's like, which prototype cell are you talking about? And then you can say, the one with the reuse identifier of blah, blah, blah. Make sense? So I need to be able to set the identifier here as something unique that the code will use. So I just almost all the time just call these my cell. But you could call it Pokemon cell or whatever you wanted. And now, thus concludes the setup of tables. Okay? Should we do that again? Okay. So I'll do it from scratch. Delete. So all I have is my view controller. I hit the little plus and say I want a table. What kind of table? I just want a table view. Not a table cell, not this one little thing, but I want a table. And also not a table view controller, meaning I don't want the whole page, it's just a table. I want to take a page I already got and add a table to it. So drag my table view over into my view controller. I'm going to make it look big so it doesn't look stupid by dragging the little scaly thingies. We'll talk about how to make that even better later, but for now, it's good enough. Then I select that one, and I make sure that content is set to dynamic properties. That just means that I can control this table using code, is all that drop-down lets me do. And underneath that, I say prototype cells 1. I'm going to make one prototype cell that everything else is based on. Once I've made that prototype cell, I can go over here to the left where I have my layers, expand the table view, and select just the table view cell. That is the prototype cell I just created. It wasn't there until I said make a prototype cell. Then I choose style. The one we're going to go with is basic. And then I give it a name, a reuse identifier. This is a unique name that only this cell has. And so when I say I want to make copies of it, I can specify what thing to make copies of. Done. We good? Okay, great. Now if I were to run this, I don't think it would look like anything. I think it's just a white screen because I haven't put any stuff in this yet. So let's put some stuff in it. So now let's get our code up. So I'm going to again get my little 2-up view where I can see the storyboard and the code at the same time. And I'm going to pan around. There we go. Okay. So what I need to do is I want my view controller to be able to edit the contents of the table in the same way that I wanted before my view controller to be able to edit the contents of a label. I want to be able to do it with a table. So I just select the entire table. Be careful. Do not get the individual cell. That's a landmine. You want to make sure that you've clicked kind of down here in the gray space where there's nothing specific. And over here on the left-hand side, it says table view is the thing that you selected. And command drag that over, or control drag it rather, over in the same way you control drag over a label. And it says, what do you want to do? And I say, I want to put stuff in that. So that's an outlet. Okay? In the same way a label, I put stuff in, it's an outlet. I want to put stuff in my table. And I want to give it a name. So I'll call it my table. You can call it anything you wanted. And then the rest of the defaults are right there and we're good. And I hit connect. And ta-da, I now can control my table, which is great. Questions about that before I kill the storyboard and just work in code? We good? Yeah.
So the prototype cell, it just basically sets the template for the rest of the
Exactly
cells.
right. Yeah. Yes. You can replace the word prototype with template. That's a good better word than prototype, to be honest. Okay. Awesome. And now what I'm going to do is kill my storyboard so just like I only see the code because everything else is good to go. Okay. Like I said, thus concludes the order that you must always go through. Okay? Now, if you're anything like me, I literally had this conversation yesterday with somebody who came to my office hours, just wanted to work ahead a little bit. And I was like, oh, you do this and I forget this. Like, it's like one of those, like, you're just going to have to memorize it. And if you're anything like me, you're just going to go back to your notes 100,000 times for the next 5 years because you're never going to memorize all those steps. It's just, and you're going to forget half of them half the time, and you're going to be like, why isn't it working? And you're like, oh yeah, I got to name my reuse identifier. Type, 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 and then you're super frustrated that you just wasted 3 hours of your life. Okay, so just take copious notes. It's a stupid process, but it's the one we have to go through. Okay, cool? Yeah.
So, just to clarify, you linked the table to just now. You didn't link Excel.
Yeah, so I linked.
Yeah, the full text. I saw, but
Yeah.
my question is, do I reference, when I want to talk about that cell, do I reference it by saying like the table dot the cell? Or?
It's a great question, and we'll answer that in a minute. Okay, you're totally doing great. We're on the right track. Okay? Great, so now I have a table view. Okay? And here's a little thing we haven't gotten to. Okay, so pause the fact that we've made wired up a table, and now I want to take a step back and look at some stuff that we breezed over before and talk about it, because now it's going to suddenly make matter. Okay? So, we have taken for granted line 10. We just kind of said, and that's where the stuff goes, okay? But line 10 here, it says class view controller : UI view controller. What this is doing is essentially saying, okay, here's a good example. This is a super easy to get example. Okay, you know like the name Adam from the Bible, from Adam and Eve, okay? Adam in the original language just meant human. Okay? So it wasn't like, so Adam was named human. So that would be like having a person that you're walking around with and their name is human. That's confusing, right? Okay? Or if I know a guy named Guy. It's very confusing to me when I talk to Guy. Okay? So that's confusing. This is confusing because what they've done with what Apple has done when they say make a new app and it just makes all the generic stuff for you, it makes a view controller that's a specific one, that first one that we had, and it names it view controller, and it is the type of UI view controller. This is effectively saying class human. Okay, so it's saying the name of the human is human, and it is a human. So this is saying the name of it is view controller, and it is a UI view controller. I know that makes no sense, but does that, you kind of with me? Okay? It's like saying class guy : human. Okay? Or class Adam : human. Yeah? Cool? Okay. Now, why does it matter that I'm a view controller? Well, all UI view controllers have certain superpowers that other things don't get. And one of the superpowers that UI view controllers get is view did load. So if I were to delete line 14 through 16, it would give me an error message saying, hey, hold on, all UI view controllers have to have a view did load. That's a rule of view controllers. Okay? Now I don't know what part of us makes us humans. We'll say brain makes us humans. If you don't have a brain, you're not a human. That doesn't seem right to me either, but let's just pretend like that's the case, okay? Because if somebody's born without a brain, I still think they're human, but that, whatever, okay? So we'll just say that brain is what makes a human. That's like saying, here's a human and it has no brain. Be like, nah, by definition, it has to have a brain. It's a terrible example, but you get what I mean, right? Maybe a better example would be like, here's a car and it has no engine. No, it's not a car without, no, that still is kind of a car. But you get the idea, right? You with me? Okay? So this is saying, hey, there is a thing called a view control. It is called view controller. It is a view controller, and so it, by definition, must also have a view did load. With me? Okay. Well, in order for us to edit tables, we can't just be a view controller, because view controllers don't know how to edit tables. We have to also be a thing that can edit tables, and things that can edit things we call a delegate inside of Swift. Delegate is a word you should write down. And you have to be able to you have to have stuff to put into the table. That is called a data source inside of Swift. So this view controller right here cannot merely be a UI view controller. It also needs to be a table delegate and a table data source. If it's a table delegate, that means it has the superpowers of being able to edit tables, and if it's a table data source, that means it can put data into tables. You with me? Yeah.
When you say is it a table data source, that means it can just, back. Is that what you
Make
to
them
the
what?
table? And you know how it's, you have to make it mutable and it
Yeah.
costs and
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
stuff. Is that what that is?
Yeah. We haven't gotten there yet, but I'm setting this up to that. So like, let me give you an example. I have my table of Pikachu, okay? If I want the ability to add things to this table, that means I must also be a delegate. In the same way a delegate for a country going to another country. In order to speak for that country, they have to be a delegate. You get it? Okay? So in order to speak for this table, I have to be a delegate to this table. But that just merely says I can mess with the table. It doesn't say I have the thing to mess with the table with. The stuff that goes into the table will be the data source. So the name Articuno would be sitting over here in a data source, and I have to say both. I have the ability to mess with the table, and I know the stuff that goes with the table. Make sense? If you don't get it, just copy the code. It's not, you don't have, this is one of those cases where you don't have to totally understand what it's doing, just play along. Okay? Cool. Okay. So, what's awesome is that I can make something more than one thing, and we have not done this yet, but it will happen again. And so this this thing called view controller that is a UI view controller, I can say it's a view controller, and it's also a table delegate, and also a table data source. So right here, to say also is a comma. So it's a UI view controller, also a UI table view delegate, and also a UI table view data source. And so this one thing, line 10 to 20, suddenly is not only a UI table view controller, but it's UI view controller. It's also a UI table view delegate and a UI table view data source. And then, yeah.
Does it matter if you put data source first or delegate, or does it always have to be delegate?
I don't know. That's just the order I've ever done it in. And I don't know why I did that in order, because it's not in alphabetical order. I think it's just, I don't know. Okay, hopefully not. I would hope that doesn't matter. And then it says, meh, you can see right here, meh, you have a problem, okay? What's the problem? And this is the best thing in the world, because it used to be that you couldn't do this, and it's so great that they've added this feature. It's saying, hey, this view controller that you've made up, it does not conform to protocol UI table view data source. What's that saying is, hey, this thing doesn't have the superpowers it's supposed to have. So remember how I said all view controllers have to have viewed loads? Well, table view data sources also have to have certain superpowers. Okay, and it's saying you don't have those superpowers. And here's what's awesome. To fix that, all you have to do now is hit the fix button. And it's incredible, because it used to be you had to type all this, and it's very confusing, and blah, blah, blah. Now all I have to do is say fix, ta-da! It fixes it for me, which is awesome, okay? And so what this is saying is it's created two new superpowers. And these two superpowers look the same, but they are distinct. Because you can read them, and they're literally the same all the way up until here. And what this is saying is, first of all, my table needs to have a certain number of rows. So how many of these things are there? Okay? And then for each one of those, what's the cell that you want to put into that row? So this first thing is number of rows in section, and the second one is cell at row at, which means what's the row you're putting into, or what's the cell you're putting into each row. Make sense? You with me? Okay. So this right here, we're just going to tell it the total number of things we're going to put into it. We'll start easy and just say return 5. So now what this means is we want 5 rows. Now you could do a bajillion complications and code inside of these curly brackets in order to generate the total number of rows. So for instance, let's say you were Starbucks and you had a table that was supposed to be all the Starbucks that were within a 5-mile radius of current location. Well, then that would make like a call out to an API and get the numbers and and it would say 8 right now. And then you'd move someplace else and you do the same thing with, say, 13. And you go someplace else and it'd say 2. Right? You with me? So this is, you can do some really complex stuff in here. For our purposes, we're just going to say 5. There'll just be 5 of them. Next is this. This code is what's the cell you want, I know. What's the cell you want to put into each row? This code right here, line 15 through 17, will be run multiple times. Specifically, it'll be run the total number that the previous one is. So right here it's saying 5. This will be run 5 times. If this said 20, it will be run 20 times. If it said 1, it will just be run once. Make sense? Okay? And so this is just basically assemble the little Lego kit of the cell that you want for each one. So here's this one, here's that one, here's this one. Cool? So here's Pikachu, here's Squirtle, here's Charmander. You with me? Cool. Okay. So what we're going to need to do is make a cell. So we'll make a new variable. And you can name this thing anything you want. I always name it cell because it helps me remember what it is. Whoopsie. And this is where I get my cheat code because I don't remember what the exact code is to do that. I know it's old. I know. There it is. Good enough. Thank you. Okay. So take your cell, or make a variable called cell. Ignore all this down here for now. Take your cell, and what I want you to do is go into my table. My table is that table that I drug over a second ago. Go into my table and make a copy of a prototype cell. That's what this means. Okay? And which prototype cell? The one that has the identifier that I typed in before. And when I typed in the storyboards, I called it my cell. But you could call it anything. Doesn't matter as long as it's the same name as what you typed in. Okay? So go into my table, which is that table that we have. Make a copy of one of the prototype cells. Which prototype cell? The one that I named my cell. Why not? Okay? And then what I'm doing with this for is I'm telling it which cell this is supposed to go in the table. So is this the second one, the first one, the 10th one, the 20th one, whatever. In index path, which we won't get to today, is just the number that we're on right now. So this is first time index path is going to be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4 in our example. Okay? So it's just telling you what it is. You can technically assemble these out of order. I've never done that in my life, but if you wanted to, you could. Okay? Cool? You good? Okay, I'll give you this code, so if you don't get it typed in exactly right, I'll know if you. Okay. Cool. Next one I'm going to do is none of that. And none of that. And not that. Next, what I'm going to do is populate that text label inside of my cells. Remember I chose basic? Remember that? And when I chose basic, it automatically says there's a thing called text label inside of there. And so text label is the name of that little label, that little title label. And so I'm treating it exactly the same way I did when I made a label before. So I say get the label and dot text and change its text. Only this time, remember I said we only use dot syntax, like usually there's one? Well, here's an example of more than one. Okay, so it's saying go into the entire cell that we've created, get the text label that's inside of that cell, and change this attribute inside of it, text. And then what do we want to change it to? And I'm just going to change it to the word test.
Do you need a question mark?
Yes, we're not going to explain why the question mark today. Okay, now we're nearly done. We're so close to done, I can taste it. The last thing we need to do and this is what the thing I forgot when you and I were talking, is this table view delegate and table view data source, I need to do a final wire up, which is to say, hey, I now need to make it so that this can change that table view, or it can change a table view, and I need to say, which table view do you want to change? This one, okay? So which table view do I want to change? It's that one that I've already named my table. And so I just need to say, hold on. I think this is it. My table dot delegate equals self, and my table dot data source equals self. I think this is right. Let's compile this. If it works, then I'm right. If not, I gotta look it up. And we got 7 minutes, so it's gonna be a little tight.
And so what does this actually do?
Yeah, so what's this do? Yeah, so remember my table is the name that I gave it when I drug it over? Remember that? Well, up here I said this view controller, this page, can be a delegate to table views, and it can be a data source of table views, okay? But I need to be specific, because Swift is annoying, it makes you be specific about everything. I need to be specific and tell it which table can it be a delegate for, and which table can it be a data source for. Because in theory, although this never happens, it's entirely possible to have multiple tables on a given page. So I need to be able to say, like, this one is the one that's a delegate for, this one is the one that's a data source for. Any other questions while it's booting up? We good? Yeah.
What was the, where'd you say you have to sell that text symbol? Is that just from, is that self prototype? Or,
Yes. So cell is you can think of it as the prototype cell. It's a copy of the prototype cell. And because it's running inside of this little start and stop, this ceases to exist every time it runs. So it's going to run 5 times. And each time I need to say, there is a cell, and it's a copy of the prototype cell. And this particular one, change it this way. La 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 la.
so the only thing we dragged over that had, like, that the code populated for, or the one you gave it, is the actual table?
Just the table itself. Yep, you don't drag over the cells. Great question. Okay, I can't tell if this is not working or if it's still trying to run, so give me a second. I might have this delegate data source messed up, so. Oh, dang it, it worked. I'm just not being patient. Okay. Okay, now we've learned that the screen recording is the thing that slows us down, not Zoom. So I've been mad at Zoom this whole time. And it's like, Zoom's like, it's not my fault. Okay, well, trust me, in 30 years, it's going to say test. Oh, there it goes. Test, 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 test. Okay? And so, why is it saying test, 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 test? Because I said, and why is it 5 of them? So I said, there's 5 of them. All 5 look like this. They all say test. Test, 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 test. Okay? Yeah. Okay, I see. Yeah.
Mine is going
I'll give you my code too. It might be something earlier. I'll explain the question mark next Thursday. When you made it, you probably don't put it on. Okay, that might, if you were missing it, that's what that is. You can fix it here. All those settings are in, if you select this over here on the left, it will bring all them up over here. So it's in one of these tabs, probably this one. So you just got to find it and futz around with it. Make sure that this looks right. If yeah, make sure you have chosen something in that team. It's weird that it would make you do that, though. I don't know why. But again, you're going to get my code, so don't worry. Okay? Okay. We're so close to something awesome. So let me close the loop and we'll do something awesome. Okay? We only go until 1, is that correct? Ugh. Okay. So, here we go. Do you remember arrays from JavaScript? Okay. What are arrays? What's an array?
It's like a compiled list of things.
It's a list of things. 100%. Ding, 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 ding. Okay. So, awesome. Good work. An array is just a list. So if you have an array of groceries, it would be Mountain Dew, bacon, and Brussels sprouts, or whatever. Okay? And remember, computers start counting at 0. So if my array was Mountain Dew, bacon, and Brussels sprouts, number 0 would be Mountain Dew. Number 1 would be bacon. Number 2 would be Brussels sprouts. Make sense? Okay. What's awesome, and this is like so Taco Bell ingredients combined in a crazy way to make something cool, is remember how I said we knew which one of these things was its number when you're making it? It was called index path. That's the number through that we are making. Well, if we combine that plus arrays, because arrays count the exact same way, we can change the word test to be whatever it is inside of an array. So if we have an array of Pokemon names, and it goes Pikachu, Charmander, or Squirtle, then it can just go Pikachu, Charmander, Squirtle. Does that make sense? Okay, so let's do that. We never made an array yet, but I'm going to make an array up here above all this code. I'll call it Pokemon, and they are an array. And arrays in Swift we indicate with a square bracket. And then each one of the things separated by commas. And so now I have an array called Pokemon. The 0th one is Pikachu, the first one is Squirtle, and the second one is Charmander. Okay? This should look except for the word var, this should look identical to what you're used to doing in JavaScript. Super common across all languages, how this is done. Okay, cool. And then, instead of saying I want 5 of them, because I don't have 5 Pokemon, I only have 3, I could type in 3 right here. But what happens if someday down the road they release another Pokemon game and I no longer have 3 Pokemon? Now I have 300 Pokemon. Instead of saying 3 right here, I want it to count the total number of Pokemon in that array. In JavaScript, that's called length. In Swift, we call that count. So it's just Pokemon.count. And so now it'll make 3 because I only have 3 Pokemon. Make sense? Then last little super awesomeness is down here. Instead of saying the word test, I want to look up inside the Pokemon array. Which spot? The spot called indexPath.row. Because this is the number that I'm on when I make each one of those slots. And so now if I hit play, and again I'm going to give you this code. When I hit play, it's going to say Pikachu, Squirtle, Charmander, Articuno. Then we're a little behind because we missed, because of our snow day. So we're not going to be able to, you won't be able to make the entire Pokedex over the weekend. But I want you to get started on it, okay? And we'll pick up on this on Tuesday. But now it should, assuming I didn't break anything, say Pikachu, Squirtle, Charmander. Okay. And if I want another Pokemon, this is the coolest part of this superpower. If I want another Pokemon, I just put it up here in this array, hit go, and it'll just magically be there. Yeah.
There's no like for loop or anything. So
What's that?
There's no like for loop or anything. So where's like the data? Because you're not.
So
writing anything
line
down.
14 says number of rows in the section. You see that?
You're determining the
The
count.
count of the Pokemon. So it says 4. And then that 4 gets passed on line 18. And it runs line 18 through 24 4 times. Part of the rules of table. Yeah. All right, cool. I will post this code to Canvas. I want you to kick the tires here. See if you can add your own Pokemon. Choose some other kind of fun stuff. Make sure you get it. And then Tuesday we'll pick up where we left off here and you'll build it out.
So we shouldn't turn anything in.
There, yeah, I'll kick the due date's going to get kicked down the road. Okay? Cool.
I know I saw.